Hey, good morning, everybody. This is BIA Kelsey Live, and I'm joined by Rick Ducey, who is the managing director of BIA Kelsey and author of an upcoming programmatic television report that we're doing. It's called Programmatic is Coming to Local TV in 2017. It's been threatening to do so for years, and now it's going to leap upon us. Rick and our colleague Mitch Oscar have put together this report, and it's going to be available next week on our site. But we're lucky enough to get the opportunity to run him through his paces about this topic. How are you doing today, Rick?
Hey, Mitch, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Great. Unfortunately, I'm sitting in a Sunnyvale Days Inn in California. It's not the most glamorous setting for our conversation, but heck. You, on the other hand, are in the nation's capital, and I bet you're getting ready for a lot of excitement.
Yes, exactly. Tomorrow's inauguration day, so a lot of moving parts and pieces will be unloading on the town tomorrow.
So the paper, Programmatic is Coming to Local TV in 2017. It's about a 50-page paper. You did a lot of research. You talked to dozens of industry experts, and there's a great section of just conversational feedback about various questions in this paper that's well worth reading. But can you summarize what the paper's about and what you found?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so the notion of local programmatic television leverages a couple of different trends going on. But basically, it's adding data to the planning process. When marketers target TV audiences, for the most part, they're using Nielsen ratings historically and up through the current moment. And they offer age and gender targeting for TV audiences to marketers. So the notion of programmatic is that it adds two elements to that process that make it more powerful and hopefully a little bit more efficient in that marketplace, both on the buy side and the sell side. Mm-hmm. So the programmatic part means adding more data than gender and age audience data into the decision-making process in this marketplace, and adding some automated workflow. Ideally, the workflow is totally automated. We're nowhere near that. Right. And then also, ideally, we are able to add pretty seamlessly, transparently, high-quality data about the audience, not just their media consumption, but also their consumption intentions and behaviors. Right. So marketers want to reach their segments more accurately, more efficiently, and that's what's behind local programmatic television.
So let's step back and talk about local targeted video right now. This is a market of about $32.6 billion this year. And right. You all projected, and as part of our general projections, we found that that's going to about $37.6 billion in 2021. So about $5 billion over 5 years are going to be added to this market. Do right. you see that primarily coming out of programmatic, or is that something that will, I mean, programmatic is going to slowly take over that market, right?
Right. I mean, so we see two other lessons about how programmatic evolves and the speed at which it evolves. Mm-hmm. On the digital side, display inventory, for example, or AdWords and video display, static display, and that part of the digital marketplace of advertising, some estimates are 70+% of those advertising transactions on the buy side, sell side happen through basically programmatic platforms. Linear video, like broadcast television right. and cable television, has a little bit slower in moving into that programmatic paradigm because of a number of different cultural and technological challenges. On the national TV market side of things, actually programmatic has been moving much faster than in local. Again, there's fewer moving parts and pieces in national TV. It's actually a smaller community.
And bigger markets.
Joey said, yeah. And in local, it's different measurement technology. There's more players. There's more moving parts and pieces. So it's progressing slowly. It's somewhere around 3 years behind the evolutionary stage of where national programmatic TV is on the local side.
And so one of the elements of programmatic is almost having a trading philosophy for going in and getting the inventory you want. And that seems to me to be one of the major adoption points for local over the next few years, is having that first integrated into tools so they can do it, and then learning the skills that go with it.
That nails it. I mean, that's exactly right. So, I mean, again, the ideal is the buy-sell conversation is more automated, more efficient. Right. And what the marketers want to see is the inventory described as the actual content, what content is their brand going to be exposed in? What TV show, what day part, what network, things like that. And then what is it they're actually buying? So if my target segment is mothers 25 to 34 who are in the market to buy a minivan, to pick one kind of stereotypical segment in the next 30 days, those are the people I want to deliver my commercial message to. How can I most effectively identify what programs that target segment is watching and get my commercial in the programming that that target segment's watching? Today, I mean, the big tool you have in linear TV for local is women 25 to 34 are in this audience. So if there's a lot in that audience, you figure on average, you're going to get some coverage into your target segment. But if you can pick programming inventory that you have a much higher confidence delivers exactly that segment, because you're able to augment the audience data with consumption data and other intent data. As a marketer, you can say, wow, that's awesome. Okay, I'm identifying where my target audience is. I'm able to deliver relevant creative in a relevant time frame, and I'm looking for better results, and typically they find those better results.
So when do you think this is really going to be just the standard way we buy and sell inventory for local?
Yeah, for local and specifically for local linear video, as we call it these days, broadcast TV stations,
linear.
and then MVPD, cable, satellite kinds of things. In the national TV market, where things are a little bit more advanced in terms of what's deployed and the buy-sell conversations, it's still a relatively small percent of the total spend in advertising, and like I say, local TV is a few years behind that.
Sure.
So in local TV in 2017, maybe 1% of $20 billion plus will transact more or less programmatically. Part of that is because local TV stations are a little bit reluctant to put their inventory into these programmatic exchanges. They want to have some control over it. They don't want to see it get commoditized. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, counter to that fear of facing a situation of commoditized inventory, when you add the audience targeting data, that marketer trying to get to that segment I was describing, say again, it's women 25 to 34 who are looking to buy a minivan within the next 30 days. If I can show that I have that I over-index in that segment in my program, I can actually get much higher rates rather than a push towards commoditization and lower rates, CPM rates. So basically, the marketplace needs experience on both sides, and both sides are using data scientists trying to bring all these different data sources together and model out what's going to happen. So, I mean, it's a perfectly plausible scenario now that a TV station could say, I have some inventory, and my goal is to get a $25 CPM. Mm-hmm. And they sell it to an advertiser, and the station's happy, and the advertiser says, boy, I got a great deal. According to my own analytics, that 30-second spot was actually worth $100 CPM to me, and I got it for only 25. So in that case, the local broadcasters are leaving money on the table. The flip side is if broadcasters have a better sense of the value of their audiences, they know to charge more, so they can eliminate that kind of gap between the actual value to the marketer and the audience value that they're delivering. So it could push towards commoditization and lower CPM rates. I think that's what broadcasters on the local side have been somewhat fearful of. Right. Same thing with programmers on the national TV side. But there's been a series of checks and balances, private exchanges and reserves and things like that have evolved in the marketplace that allow people to have more comfort, both on the buy side and sell side, that they're getting what they want.
So actually, strategically buying the inventory you want in the future, banking it almost, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, there's and there's a whole different set of paradigms that are out in the marketplace. I mean, so some people actually buy inventory. There's a couple of different models out there where some companies will buy available local inventory, packaged up, and sell it into the national TV market, as one example. And there can be a bunch of arbitrage plays in this programmatic exchange marketplace as we go forward. And it's like any exchange. People look for signals, they look for patterns, they start to make predictions, they reconcile those predictions against what actually happened, and just factor in all of that experience. And so over time, the marketplace just gets smarter and smarter. So you start to see maybe a move towards parity between the buyers and the sellers. But basically, the theory is everyone's going to be better. As you add more data into the mix, decisions can be smarter. Executions can hopefully be more efficient, and then the outcome's better for everybody. That's sort of the utopian version of programmatic that we're all trying to work towards.
So in a lot of ways, it's like the financialization of the markets. The more data around the assets being traded, the more valuable the assets could be.
Exactly right. And then, more valuable is sort of the eye of the beholder. So one type of programmatic inventory in local TV may have no interest in auto dealer, but it may be perfect for an insurance company. That's exactly the segment I want.
Right.
And so you really, the inventory of programming matched to audience and audience attributes as described by enhanced data sets, you're really able to make much smarter matches between the marketer and what the programmer's delivering. So that's a little bit of arbitrage, but it's sort of data enhanced, and so people can just make decisions.
So let's switch gears just a little bit to the experience consumers have, and consumers have been used to tuning into the big networks for years, and more recently into subscription services and so forth. But the size of our audiences is changing a lot. There are still a few major hits, and 80 million people might watch something. But for the most part, in the old days, the standard was if you got a 5 household share, you were doing okay on a national market. But in many cases, you got a 0.5 household share for any cable offering on the network at any time. And those tiny little audiences are beginning to be translated into real power in the marketplace because they're so carefully targeted, in many cases simply because the creatives chose to be very targeted. There's lifestyle shows, House, Home and Garden, or Home Flipping, or Duck Dynasty, where you've got people who identify very strongly. And we saw this, and we saw this recently, and in the New York Times, they showed maps, overlays of television viewership of various shows for the 2 different candidates. And they're very starkly different. And you could see how Donald Trump won the election by focusing very carefully on certain areas of the country and certain demographics. Is that the future of television, is increasingly tuned audiences and often very small relative to what we used to expect?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so you're talking about shares and ratings and, overall ratings, which is a percentage of all TV households, which is a smaller number than shares. Yeah, I mean, you see those go down a lot from double digits, were sort of typical, a generation ago for ratings in prime time. Now, high single digit shows are like, wow, that's a killer event.
Right.
So what happened is more fragmentation. There's more viewing choices, for one thing. For another thing, even within linear television, which generically sort of means broadcast and cable viewing, linear meaning scheduled.
Starts at the top of the hour and ends at the bottom of the hour. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then the digital or so-called nonlinear it's some form of on-demand. So if you go to Netflix, you go through a menu, pick what you want to watch, click, and it starts. And same thing with the MVPD provider. You can go through their on-demand side. So that's sort of the digital nonlinear side. And there's advertising in there too, but most of the advertising still falls to the linear side where the program starts at 8 o'clock and the advertising message is going to be delivered at 8:05:30. And this is important because my car sale on the lot starts tomorrow. So I want to make sure the advertisement runs tonight. But yeah, so ratings are getting smaller. So from a marketer perspective, that means, their metric for linear TV oftentimes is GRPs, gross rating points. So a campaign planner will say, I need to have a certain number of gross rating points in San Francisco, in Seattle, in Boston, or whatever. And if they can buy 1 or 2 video sources, cable or broadcast, to get to that GRP goal in a 1-week period, great. But just as you're saying, what happens more recently is they have to go deeper into the video choices to hit those GRP goals, or buy heavier schedules. And if you buy heavier schedules, we all have had that experience where you're watching some movie or TV show or something that you like, and you see the same commercial like 5 times in a 60-minute period.
Sometimes
so you don't
after one another.
Right. So you got to watch that rotation. You want to have that same commercial hitting the same person in too short of a period. Otherwise, you move from being, hopefully interesting to, oh my gosh, I hate these people because I keep seeing that stupid commercial. So nobody wants that.
That raises another point I wanted to ask you about, and that is the challenge that the broadcasters and the MVPDs are going to have in selling this and explaining. I mean, what we're talking about is increasing fragmentation, but the data is giving us the ability to identify what's fragmented and go after the fragments we want, which is which is strangely the market segmenting naturally.
Yes.
How do you
Yes, and
explain that and sell it?
Yeah, so the culture in TV, roughly goes like this. Say, they have in that part of the industry upfronts, and so the networks and the big groups will say, "Here's our new programming that we're going to be releasing, and look how exciting it is." And advertisers, you should buy advertising in these exciting programs. So the buy-sell process is driven by programs. Here are the cool programs, and here's the audience we think these programs are going to attract. You should be part of this exciting marketing opportunity. It's flipped, and now TV is starting to resemble more digital, which is I'm buying impressions, and those impressions have some aspects to them that are interesting to me. I know something about the audience that generates those impressions. And so I'm not just buying program ratings, I'm buying a specific set of audience. And if you go to the data marketplace and match that to TV viewing, so ComScore, which recently acquired Rentac, for example, they match. They match the audience data to household data, and there's a lot of information you can garner to match on a household level. So say either you or I are in an audience, and they markers match to our zip code and maybe even to our household on an anonymized basis. So they know a lot more about us to target it. So auto intenders or people looking for life insurance or whatever the product or service is, mapping all this data to it can really add a lot of value and insight to the marketing process. And so that kind of changes things. The program is going to be exciting because it attracts the audiences, but we just need deeper understandings of who that audience is so you can make the appropriate match between the programmer delivering those audiences and the marketer looking to find specific segments of that audience.
And so there's a real art in that local selection. And we got a piece that I just put up on the blog this morning. We looked at the IAB's new analysis of the influence of mixing TV with traditional and with digital media, and they found that it lifts overall brand awareness and certain early stage in the marketing process metrics. And so what we did is we went and looked at it in comparison to a single market, the automobile market in Los Angeles. There's a lot of opportunities for different mixes of media. And so in many cases, they're spending 30 or 40% of their budget on TV and then augmenting it with everything else. In this case, we're talking about being able to spend it more granularly in TV to augment that digital and potentially raise the lift much more. And so,
yeah, I mean, that's definitely what's happening. As you were mentioning earlier, that in local video spending, video targeting local audiences, we're seeing between now and 2021, $5 billion in incremental spending. And most of that splits actually between broadcast television and digital video.
Right.
So two things there. One is doing this cross-platform, cross-screen marketing is something that marketers have been very interested in doing, and it makes sense because they're getting that lift that you're talking about.
Right.
So broadcast TV sort of is the megaphone, that's the reach frequency. If you want to get everybody in the market or be able to reach everybody in the market on a DMA level, TV is great. And if you want to follow that up with more targeted messaging, or depending upon your metaphor you want to use, so TV, broadcast TV, sort of top of the funnel, I'm trying to get your attention. Down at the bottom of the funnel, I want to convert you to something, an action, ideally a sale. Digital media typically have been viewed as lower funnel media choices in a media mix campaign, whereas broadcast TV is more upper funnel. So from that perspective, if you buy into that paradigm, it's a good natural complement, broadcast TV and digital video. On the other hand, we've seen some marketers over the past several years get excited about the targeting capability of digital video, online video, and mobile video, and move spend out of broadcast and cable into the digital video. And rather than lift, they saw declines. And even though broadcast TV is a little bit less precise in terms of targeting, because we don't quite have the data available that we do on the digital side, something happens that's magical and wonderful, apparently. And so marketers have been encouraged to move spend back into linear TV, but they're still keeping growth, more spending in digital video. So they're pulling it out of other sources. So growth, is about equal between broadcast television and digital video in the local level. So for broadcasters, this is interesting. Half of the available growth in local video is actually going to digital. They're still going to grow a little bit, and in broadcast, it's always even year and odd year. They have much better years in even years when there's political and Olympic spend. But if broadcast TV operators can figure out how to crack the code on targeting audiences better and delivering that extra data to marketers, they can get some of that growth and spend that's going to digital video. And then on the other hand, they can offer their own digital video offerings. And we see some broadcasters doing that too. But the growth in local video spending is disproportionately going to broadcast TV and digital video about equally. So, you can take advantage of that growth from either side.
And all through the conversations with the industry executives in programmatic, they describe this as a complementary set of technologies. But what they need, it sounds like, is the tools for omni-channel or multi-channel marketing and reporting in order to really fully embrace and use this as a tool. Now, there's a key to that, and that is something called ATSC3. Which is a targeting capability that will be rolled out over the next few years as well. In fact, the first trials, I believe, start in the U.S. this month. They're the first real deployment next month. What is it? What is
so two things you've got there. First, yes, marketers have been operating in silos, or there was this kind of fun article in Harvard Business Review a year or so ago about swimming lanes. But basically, from a marketer perspective, you have video teams, you have digital teams, maybe you have print teams, and they're each kind of operating in silos historically. And so you don't really understand the full benefit of a media mix because you have the TV team that just looks at TV. What marketers are learning is that it makes much more sense to target both the spend and also the creative. Assume that people do use more than one channel. They use their phone and they use TV. They use a computer and they go to the mall and get exposed to out-of-home digital video. So from a planner perspective, the media mix, it's really important to understand the cumulative effect and incremental effect of each channel so you can do an effective job going cross-platform. Audiences increasingly are going cross-platform, and so advertisers want to follow those audiences on those different screens that they're using. So that's one background driver that's just going on that marketers are trying to adjust to. So into that comes broadcasters, which are using this forward-only distribution platform, essentially. They broadcast out and they don't really have any signals coming back, unlike digital platforms like internet and mobile and so on, where you can click and get a response and see something different. And broadcast TV requires a separate type of receiver than internet delivery to date. So if you have a phone and you can connect that to the internet, you're connected to the internet. Your phone becomes your computer. If you have a TV set, increasingly there are connected TVs, but the broadcast standard basically requires you to have broadcast reception technology. You have to have a TV receiver in something.
And a lot of the interactive there is actually using the internet.
Exactly right. So there's kind of, people have the experience of watching TV and using a tablet or their phone to interact with TV content. So it's sort of interactive, but the idea is to have that experience be more integrated so it's easier for the user. The user experience is enriched and easier and to become more powerful. And for TV, they've always had to use a different channel, either a connected TV and using a keyboard or a mouse or a pointer device or a phone or a tablet or something like that. So what you're talking about is interesting because TV has gone through a couple of generational shifts over the past couple of decades. Since its inception, broadcast TV was analog, and then I guess within the past generation, it transitioned to digital. So what that meant is, okay, our TV sets that we used to have that were analog no longer worked. We either had to buy a digital TV set or a set-top box converter that would take the digital signal and play it on an analog TV set. We're going to go through the same thing over the next couple of years, where we're going to go from one standard, which is called ATSC 1.0, and that's the digital standard we have right now in the US. We're going to jump that to ATSC 3.0, it's called the next standard. What's interesting about the next standard is it's also digital, of course, but it's natively internet friendly. So it uses IP, Internet Protocol suites. So that signal that gets transmitted knows how to behave on internet devices. computers, tablets, phones, anything that's connected to the internet. I mean, your TV set, your refrigerator may have a screen, and if it has an internet connection, it can actually now receive your broadcast TV signal. So that really increases the ability for local broadcasters to connect audiences with their program using their over-the-air transmission, and there's other kinds of natural benefits that over-the-air transmission has. You don't have to be on a data plan.
Right.
It's going to reach you perhaps in more places than your cell phone signal would. And it will also have some personalized content capabilities or targeting capabilities. And that, you're right, is starting to be rolled out in the marketplace. The big convention where we see a lot of this technology coming out is the NAB show, which happens in April in Las Vegas, coming up in a few months. And there are going to be some deployments in South Korea, which is another country that uses this technology. So we're going to be seeing more and more of it. I mean, commercially available products are coming out this year, and we're going to start to see broadcasters use it in the real world, in the marketplace. The thing is that it's not backwards compatible, so the technology that we have at home now won't work with this ATSC3 without some sort of converter or starting to buy new devices that take advantage of this new standard.
So we have an adoption challenge here, just as we've had in several different generations. Are there metrics people should be marketers and the industry should be watching to understand how we're making progress on that challenge?
Well, sure. I mean, typically it's, from a marketer perspective, it's reach and frequency. How many people can I reach and how often can I reach them? We need to have new technologies. We need to have new platforms. And a classic dilemma there is I want to have some really cool features in this next generation technology. And I can do that. But then I have to make a choice. If it's going to be backwards compatible, I can't have all the cool features of a new technology that I would like to be able to have because I have to support all these existing devices. Or I can say, let's just make a shift here and really maximize what we can do with this new technology and just create the marketplace incentive for people to buy that new technology. So we went from analog phones to digital phones, and we went from flip phones to smartphones. And some of these things don't work with the older technology, but we have such new capabilities that we're okay with that. So for a marketer, they're looking at reach and frequency. How many people have it? What's my addressable market if I'm using this platform? And if it's big enough, great. Or even if it's small, but that's exactly my target segment. Right. Early adopters tend to be, higher household incomes and more active consumers. So if you're trying to reach that early adopter market, anybody that adopts this new technology is probably prime hunting grounds for some markets, some high-end, high consideration items.
So would you say that the consumer proposition for adopting these ATSC3 devices will be my TV, my personal TV everywhere?
I think that's a key part of it. And then, eventually over time, it'll be invisible. People will go...
As technology always does when it succeeds.
Right. So when it's first there, it's like you have an electric light. Oh, how interesting is that? Now we just go and buy lamps for our desks and homes. But for viewers, for consumers, their level of expectation has increased to a point where you're exactly right. They expect things to happen. If you start a movie on Netflix on your TV set and then move to a different room and pick up your tablet, you expect Netflix to know where you left off and restart it right there. That's what people want. And if they're watching a TV, let's say they're watching the 6 o'clock news on their phone, in the office, and then they drive home. They get back home, and they want to pick it up where it was.
Right.
That's the kind of thing. The non-real-time viewing is supported. The real-time viewing is supported. Remember who I am. So it's sort of my TV, like you're saying, without meaning to use branded names. But yeah, I mean, it's like I expect my content provider to remember my preferences and know who I am. So that goes to recommendation engines, but also just, essentially bookmarking service. Right. You should know me. This is where I left off, and that's where I want to pick up.
So we're seeing a media that becomes increasingly intimate, just as we've seen the internet. Well, all technology and media has become increasingly intimate over the course of the last 30 years, and this is how television gets over that hump.
Exactly. I think that's definitely the trend, and it's a two-edged sword, of course. That intimate personalization that increases the value of the user experience. Cool. Wow, you know too much about me, and you're getting into my private space. Uncool. So that's something that government's wrestling with. The FCC has come out with some privacy restrictions on the digital side of things. Consumers have some capability to either mask or not reveal data, or if it gets collected anyway, companies like Microsoft and Google are saying, hey, here's how you get to your data. And you
governance
can
models.
if you want.
Governance models is what we call it.
Exactly. So that's kind of critical. People like personalized services, but there becomes that creepy border where if you cross that, it's not fun for me anymore. You're starting to be intrusive.
It's a border guarded right now by Alexa and Google Home.
Right. Yeah, and it's that that tolerance or I guess aptitude for different levels of personalization / privacy barrier varies by person. So people can set their own levels, just like you do in your browser. You pick how secure do you want to be, how private do you want to be, and pick that. I think that's the kind of metaphor that will go.
That's a great place. That's a great place to end this conversation because it's been fascinating, and I really want to encourage folks to check out Programmatic is coming to local TV in 2017. Paper will be out next week. It is not on our store, but you will find our store link right now in the show description if you'd like to go check it out, folks. It'll be there, I believe, Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. The paper's going to be $195, and I think you're going to find that it's well worth the read. Rick, thanks for the time today, and I look forward to our next conversation.
All right, me too, Mitch. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. This is BIA Kelsey Live, and we'll talk to you next week.